Psalm 112, which we're looking at today, and Psalm 111, which we looked at last week, are closely linked psalms. In Psalm 111, we saw 5 reasons to be excited about our God as the psalm focused in on him. And we were left seeing as that psalm ended that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who follow his precepts have good understanding. Well, Psalm 112 picks up where Psalm 111 left off, as it focuses in on what it's like for those who live in awe of the Lord. Here's how they're described in the second half of verse 1. Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who find great delight in his commands. If you fear the Lord, if you find great delight in his commands, Psalm 112 says you'll be blessed. And we see what that blessing looks like as we read on through the Psalms. And it may be that as you read through these verses, you read of things that you've experienced in your Christian life. So maybe you've experienced the benefits of godly living as they're described in verse 5. Let me read it. Good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. Or perhaps you've known the peace that can endure through adversity, peace described in verse 8. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And yet there are bits of this psalm which I would struggle to say are true of me and true of my life. There are ways in which this psalm exposes that I don't fear the Lord as I should, that my delight in his commands isn't as great as it should be. And I know that if you're honest with yourself, you would have to say the same. Because there's only one person who truly qualifies for the blessings of this psalm. Because he is the only one who has truly feared the Lord, who obediently delighted in all of his Father's commandments all of the time, whose righteousness endures forever. He's the one who ultimately experienced the truth of verse 4, as the light dawned upon him, the upright, in the darkness of the grave on that first Easter Sunday. That grave was a place that his grace and compassion and righteousness had led him to, following his death on the cross. You see, ultimately, this psalm is true of Jesus and Jesus alone. And yet, wonderfully, we get caught up in his blessings. So as part of his family we are blessed. He's making us into mighty ones who will enjoy riches in the heavenly promised land, verses 2 and 3. And we know, verse 6, that in him our righteousness will never be shaken, that there's nothing which can threaten our standing before God. And we know we will be remembered forever because we will live forever just as he does. Our hearts can be confidently free from fear because he has triumphed over our foes, verse 8. The world, the flesh, and the devil no longer have power over us. In the language of verse 10, no matter how vexed the wicked become, no matter how much they gnash their teeth, their longings will come to nothing because he has overcome. There is one who fears the Lord. There is one who has perfectly kept his commandments, greatly delighting in them. And because of him, we are blessed. Praise the Lord indeed.